Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl as we continue our Bretonnia faction focus. And today we're going to be looking at the first part of the Bretonnian characters. So let's see what we've got. First up then is the Bretonnian Duke. So stats wise, he's got good weapon skill, strength, initiative, attacks and leadership. So a pretty good stat line. The only thing low is ballistic skill, which pretty much makes up every single Bretonnian knight. Troop type, regular infantry, assuming he's not mounted. Base size 25 by 25, and we will go on to mounts in a later video. Unit size of 1. Equipment wise, he comes basically with a hand weapon and heavy armor, so that's 5+. But he can equip a Morning Star, a great weapon, a lance if he's mounted, and a shield. And he can be mounted on a Bretonnian warhorse, a barded Pegasus, a royal Pegasus, or a hippogriff. He can take a single knightly virtue, and he can take up to 100 points of magic items. So, special rules wise, the Duke comes with Blessings of the Lady. So, if you get your ward save, if you army praise, he gets Rallying Cry, which is during the command subphase. He can nominate a friendly unit that's fleeing within his command range to immediately take a rally test. And he comes with the Grail Vow as standard, which is excellent because that's a really, really good vow. So, the Duke, he's 75 points more than a Baron, but he does gain +1 weapon skill, +1 strength, +1 wound, and +1 attack, and he does come with the Grail Vow. So, for 75 points, I think that's pretty reasonable. I think that's pretty good. And to be honest, most of the time I'm expecting to take a Duke in my army, unless I'm really struggling for points, doing something different. But I can always see good value in taking a Duke. And while the Hippogriff is nice, I would put the Duke on a Pegasus and a unit of Pegasus Knights. So that's something you have to actually consider, because the Duke, actually Duke in a Pegasus Knights, they need the Grail Vow. He can't join a unit that doesn't have the Grail Vow, so he still can't join a unit. So that's an interesting one. I've just spotted that. So a Duke cannot join a unit other than a unit of Grail Knights. So you either put him in a unit of Grail Knights, or you put him in a unit, or you put him on a Hippogriff and flying around on his own. And again, if you're going to take a Duke, you can actually, there's some pretty good builds you can do, which we'll come on to. So in terms of virtues, Knightly Temper and Heroism are both good, but they are expensive. And which one you choose obviously depends what you're trying to do with the unit. Knightly Temper if on a Hippogriff, and Heroism if in a unit. If going cheap, the virtue of Noble Disdain would be quite interesting. Sword of the Quest is really nice. You get the two different profiles, the one-handed and two-handed. You do get Strike First on the one-handed, which can be quite nice. It does give you flexibility, but it is very, very expensive. Gromwell Great Helm can be quite nice. That does get you to a 2+ armor save, and you re-roll 1s when making an armor save, so that's going to make him quite durable, along with his ward save as well. And then one of the best items, not only in Bretonnia, but I think in the game, the Falcon Horn of Fredimund. During the command subphase, take a leadership test. If passed, until the next start of turn subphase, enemy units cannot fly. I think that's an excellent, excellent magic item and can really screw up enemy armies that are running flying units, of which there are plenty of flying units out there. So, so that's one to watch out for, is the Grail Vow and what he can join. As we saw in a previous video, in looking at the Grail Vow, you can't join units that have the Knightly Vow or the Questing Vow, or Peasant. So the Grail Vow does limit where he can go. So be aware of that. I hadn't considered that until just now. And often when I've actually been playing a Duke at home, I've actually been putting him on a Hippogriff. So, which is interesting. Right. So a Baron, pretty much the same as the Duke. He's got good weapon skill, strength, initiative, attacks, and leadership. Regular infantry, comes with a hand weapon and heavy armor, all the same options. Bretonnian Warhorse, Barded Pegasus, Royal Pegasus, and Hippogriff. He may replace his Knightly Vow with the Questing Vow or Grail Vow. So if you're going to put him in a unit of Pegasus Knights, then you'd be wanting to run him with not the Grail Vow. So your Baron would be your good character to join those Pegasus Knights. May take a single Knightly Virtue and up to 75 points of magic items. So he comes with the Knight's Vow, so we saw that before. So Baron's good value. I mean, he's 75 points less than that Duke. He's got plenty of headroom in terms of being able to equip with virtues, vows, mount, magic items. So you can really boost him up. Most of the time I'd probably be looking at take a Duke or a Baron. So maybe I don't want to pay all for the Duke, and maybe I actually want a Lord who has more flexibility in units he can join because he doesn't have to take the Grail Vow. So the Baron does have a lot of use, a lot of flexibility, more so than the Duke. So it basically comes down to what you're doing with the army build, where you want to put him, what mount you want to put him on. Though, I to be honest, I wouldn't generally consider putting the Baron on a Hippogriff, because the Hippogriff's going to run on its own. So normally I'd want to put the Duke on the Hippogriff. The Baron I'm going to put on a Pegasus or a Warhorse. In terms of virtues, same as the Duke. So Knightly Temper and Heroism are good. They're expensive, but they are good. Getting things like Monster Slayer and stuff like that. And Virtue of Noble Disdain is a good cheap one if you're looking for something like that. Always opt for the Grail Vow if possible. And what I mean by that is if you're going to put him in a unit of Grail Knights, it's worth paying that extra for the Grail Vow. But if you want to do something different with him, as in you want to put him in a different unit, Grail Vow not going to be possible. Same magic items as a Duke. Sword of the Quest is great, but it's really, really expensive. Gromwell Greathelm I think is great value. That +1 armor save is basically getting you essentially to full plate armor. And then having the reroll ones as well is excellent. And the Falcon Horn is just so good. It's just so good. Okay, Paladin then. So again, all the same good stats, weapon skill, strength, initiative, attacks, regular infantry, base size 25 by 25, hand weapon and heavy armor. All the same options, but without the Hippogriff. Paladin can't be mounted on a Hippogriff. And he can also replace a Knightly Vow with a Questing Vow or Grail Vow. Like if you want to put your Battle Standard Bearer in a unit of Grail Knights, you're going to have to give him the Grail Vow, for example. He can take a single Knightly Virtue. You can Battle Standard Bearer for free and up to 50 points of magic items. So, comes with Blessings of the Lady, Rallying Cry, and Knight's Vow, which we already saw. So, I can always see myself taking at least one Paladin, especially given he's a Battle Standard Bearer for free, right? And sometimes you take two Paladins, but always one is going to be a Battle Standard Bearer. I think it's absolutely really, really important. And in terms of mounts, I would normally opt for Bretonnian Warhorse, with the intent of keeping the Battle Standard Bearer close to as much of the army. So I can't really see myself in many occasions wanting to put him on a Pegasus and a unit of Pegasus Knights. I want to keep that Battle Standard Bearer quite central to the army. Maybe put him in a unit of Grail Knights, maybe put him in a unit of Knights of the Realm, for example. So that's where I'd see, even some Knights of the Realm on foot, though I do prefer the cavalry. And in terms of virtues, again, I like to keep these sort of heroes cheap. It's a cheap hero, so keep him cheap. And therefore opt for Virtue of Noble Disdain or Discipline. And always opt to take the Grail Vow if possible, as in if you're going to put him in the unit of Grail Knights, it's worth taking the Grail Vow. Grail Vow's great, it just limits what you can join. Gromwell Greathelm, again, another good magic item, as we saw before. In terms of the banners, there's a couple of good banners he could take, which is the Razor Standard, which is Armor Bane 2 to the whole unit. That's great. That's really going to up your damage. If you're going to go into something like Chaos Warriors or you basically, some heavily armored units, adding that Armor Bane 2 to the whole unit could be really good. And the Rampaging banner as well, re-rolling the charge roll, making sure you get those charges in. Again, all important, especially for cavalry. They do have counter charge, but if you make your charge, it gives you more control over the battle rather than having to react to the enemy with a counter charge. So that's the Paladin. Next up is a prophetess. So, yeah, typical caster, average stats, low attacks, initiative, don't want to get in combat. You've got equipment-wise, hand weapon, and comes basic as a level 3. You can choose one lore from Lore of Magic, Battle. So Lore of Magic, you can get Battle Magic, Elementalism, or Illusion. You can upgrade to level 4. I actually really quite like Elementalism or Battle Magic. They all can have value depending on what you're doing, but I think there are some interesting ones with those two. Maybe mounted on a Bretonnian Warhorse, Royal Pegasus, or a Unicorn, which is specific to the casters. And then 100 points of magic items. So, Prophetess, what does she get? She gets Aura of the Lady. This is interesting. So, this character in any unit joined gains magical attacks. Cool. But so ignore anything that's got the Grail Vow because they already got magical attacks. So if they don't want to put her in a unit of Grail Knights. Blessings of the Lady. Yep, that's the same as before. Lore of the Lady. We looked at those spells in a previous video. And then Shield of the Lady. So if this character joins a unit with a strength 10 or more and has the Chivalrous Vow, they may voluntarily retire to the rear of the unit at any time. Should they do so, they're no longer in the fighting rank and cannot make melee attacks or have attacks directed against them. The unit continues to gain the leadership and special rule benefits and cast spells as if they're in the fighting rank. So this is really cool. This means that you don't just have to put your caster in the unit of archers at the back of your army, right? So you could actually put your prophetess in a unit of Knights of the Realm on foot. Suddenly your Knights of the Realm on foot now have magical attacks. She can still do her casting of her spells, her offensive spells when you're in combat and stuff. So gives you some real flexibility of where you put your caster rather than just sticking it at the back in a missile unit, which I think is great. Magical attacks and also gaining magic resistance as well. So again, I'm thinking, putting a prophetess in a unit of Knights of the Realm on foot, giving them magic resistance. That just makes them a bit tougher as well. So expect to take a prophetess in most army lists due to the way magic works in the game, and they need to have at least one level 4 wizard in an army. I really like my level 4s. I just wouldn't leave home without it. In a Bretonnian army, putting the prophetess on a mount and joining a unit of knights is a sound strategy, though being on foot in a unit of bowmen can also work, or even Knights of the Realm on foot. If your Duke is not on a Pegasus, you could opt to put her on a Pegasus and join a unit of Pegasus Knights. So that could be quite interesting. Your default is to go all comers Lore of Magic, Battle Magic, though Lore of Illusion with Miasmic Mirage, stopping enemy units marching and charging, is incredibly powerful. So you've got Illusion in there as well. So Illusion, Battle Magic, Elementalism, they all have value, but yeah, I did forget that Miasmic Mirage is such a good spell. Magic items, Prayer Icon of Cornell, plus 3 inches to dispel range, plus 1 to dispel against hex spells, and then Dispel Scroll. Dispel Scroll is always good. It's a single-use item, yes, but you roll an extra d6 when dispelling and discard the lowest result. Double 1 is still outclassed in the art, however. But yeah, Dispel Scroll's always good, and getting that extra dispel range, is always a good thing. Plus 1 dispel against hex spells. So, absolute value there, I think. So next up is the Damsel. This is your level 1 wizard. Same laws of magic, can be upgraded to level 2, and also the same mount, but not the Pegasus. So only a Warhorse, Bretonnian Warhorse, or a Unicorn, 50 points of magic items. All the same special rules. So like the Prophetess, you get the Aura of the Lady and the Shield of the Lady as well. And magic resistance is still -2. Again, I really like the combo of a level 4 and level 2. I really like that combo in most armies, depending on what you're doing. So often I'm expecting to take a Damsel, but with a different lore of magic. So, if I am using battle magic on my level 4, then I would put Lore of Illusion on my level 2. But actually, mostly keep the Damsel cheap and on foot in a unit of peasant bowmen supporting infantry. if the prophetess is mounted. But as we saw with the magic missile in terms of Law of the Lady, maybe you put your level 2 out on a horse, you go round a flank and you try and get that magic missile off. That's another option as well. But most of the time I like to keep my damsel kind of on foot in that unit of peasant bowmen at the back as a bit more of a support caster, so casting enchantments and that sort of thing, while my level 4 is doing a bit more of the work and often mounted in another unit. Similar magic items, the prayer icon of Canal is also a good thing, but a power scroll is really useful for that lower level caster, so single use, roll an extra d6 when casting, discard the lowest result. And that's useful just when you're trying to get that spell off as much as possible and want to reduce the chance of it not happening. Okay, and then the final character, Bretonnia quite light on characters. The final character then is the Sergeant at Arms. He's got good weapon skill initiative, but he does have low ballistic skill, low wounds, and low attacks. So base size is 25 by 25. He's actually regular infantry character. Equipment wise, his hand weapon and light armor 6+. He can have a halberd, additional hand weapon, cavalry spear and shield. Maybe mounted on a warhorse, and 25 points of magic items. So yeah, Sergeant at Arms. It depends if obviously you're going to mount and put him with something like mounted yeoman, or you're going to put him with some men at arms. He gets levies, which they cannot use a general's inspiring presence or battle standard. Hold your ground. Peasant's duty. So this character and the unit they have joined may give ground rather than fall back in good order. And doesn't take panic test when a friendly unit of levies breaks and flees from combat while within 6 inches. And then Warband, he gets a plus modifier to leadership based on a rank bonus, but cannot use this for a restraint test and may reroll charge. So in my Bretonnian army list, I tend to go quite light on peasants. Like, I'm taking a unit or two of bowmen. I really don't rate men at arms at the moment with the way the rules currently are. Maybe at most I've got 1 unit of men at arms. And therefore, overall, I find the Sergeant at Arms less value for me, personally. And you'll see when I do a couple of army lists kind of how I'm running my armies at the end of this series. But yeah, I don't tend to go heavy on peasants. And I think that's both a personal aesthetic thing, though I do have a ton of men at arms from back in the day, 6th to 8th edition. But not something I'm running a lot of these days. And magic items, if I'm taking a Sergeant at Arms, he's cheap, he's the cheapest character in the army list. I'd keep him cheap and keep him focused on buffing the units where possible. And that brings us to the end of the characters, but we do still have the characters' mount to go, so we're going to cover that in the next episode. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget that Grail vow and which units you can join. And if you want to keep seeing this content, then hit that subscribe button. It's completely free, and it takes like 10 seconds, not even that, to do it. But it's a huge deal for me. Like you realise this is such a massive deal for me to keep doing this. Is to hit that subscribe button. So thank you to all those that have already done it, and thank you to those in advance. You've been watching The Ghost Owl. Tune back in and we'll be taking a look at the Bretonnian mounts.